And shifting focus, one of the African Union's main projects this year is getting all 54 member states to sign and implement the agreement to establish a continental free trade area. But will this plan implode like so many grand efforts before it? At the moment, grand ideas like the Yamoussoukro Decision to treat African airspace as a single block, or simpler ones like the Abuja and Maputo declarations, which of course set minimum levels for government to spend on healthcare and agriculture, are yet to be fully implemented. Well, CGTN's Robert Nagila put that question to the head of Ernst Young's operations in Ethiopia.
My view is that we probably are getting through the low end of it, and then hopefully 2017 there's a forecast that says that Africa would grow by about 2.9%. Now, granted, it's still very low, but compared to 1.1 last year, it's a significant uptick. 2018 forecast says it's going to be around 3.8%.
Now, there's been quite a few surveys out there that point to the vast gap in perception between investors within the continent and those outside it. Right. Now, this has been a consistent theme in those reports. Why hasn't that gap closed? And are we doing a better job of telling the investment narrative?
So Africa actually has to do a better job of rebranding itself, telling its own stories. And I think the media plays a very, very significant role. You have to ask who's telling Africa's story. Is it the African media? Is it the offshore media? No, I have to say, we need to be honest. There are pockets of challenge in Africa, but there's also been tremendous improvement. So when you have somebody who's actually taken the risk and put money on the line, much more positive than somebody who reads these things or watches these things offshore, you know there's a problem. So the honor is on us, again, going back to my earlier point, as Africans, we have to take the responsibility to tell the story.
What does the future portend for the African Union when it comes to trade and America?
So the first thing we have to do is make it easy for us as Africans to do business in Africa. Now, overlay that, and then we have to take into consideration, for example, with the Trump administration, the thinking is they will look at AGOA. There's no clarity yet, but they might look at it because the president needs to reauthorize it or at least give it his blessing on a regular basis. So we also need to take it, while it's there, we as Africans have to be prepared to take advantage of AGOA. How much advantage have we taken advantage of these things? Very little. If you look at the numbers, they're very small. So the ownership, by and large, is ours. It cannot be stated or encouraged or dictated from offshore.
And one of those countries that I want to touch on, at one point you're performing so well, then the next you're somewhere down there, is Nigeria. Now, it used to be a darling of everybody. But how have the investor perceptions changed since it botched, well, some people say it's botched floating of the Naira in June 2016. The government would see it differently, but it has had a huge impact.
Nigeria is an extremely attractive market by any stretch of the imagination. If you look at any benchmark, economic benchmark, 170 million people, okay? GDP of close to $500 billion. And in the next 20 years or so, 25 years, you'll be amongst the 20 largest economies in the world. The question then becomes, how does it get there? It's had challenges because it's been trying to wean itself off oil exports. I have to be honest, most people probably don't realize that about 90% of the Nigerian economy is non-oil. It's the export earning that is very disproportionately oil dependent.
At the moment, what countries rank highest in the attractiveness survey and why?
You know, Africa is, the sub-Saharan Africa is, the economies are now on a stratified basis. So there's sort of the top 5 countries, which would be Nigeria, South Africa, Angola, Ethiopia, and then probably Kenya and Angola. And then you have this, and then you have the next tier by GDP. And that's what investors are also looking for. I mean, if you invest in Ethiopia, it's a volume market. It's 100 million people with a $72 billion GDP. As an Ethiopian American, I'm pleased to say this year for the first time, our GDP exceeded that of Kenya's, but still, I mean, they're in about the same rank, but you can see. So East Africa actually is a very strong, attractive bloc. Tanzania, I mean, I think Uganda, I mean, these are all Rwanda is an outlier. It's a top performing country in every measurement. Now, it's a relatively small country in terms of population size, it's 10 million, but you can think of it along the lines of a Singapore in Africa. So the companies who are looking to invest in certain sectors would pick Rwanda.